This is Lisa Friedrichsen, your friend and computer science professor from Johnson County Community College. And if you're looking at this screencast, it means you're probably in my Web 110 class and are looking at these course objectives and using these as a guide to know what I would expect you to know in order to show mastery of this course objective. We're on course objective 6, apply cascading styles to an HTML document through inline, internal, or external style sheets. And as you know, that's the overall objective, and it's broken down into its pieces down here in the outline. And because this is the major course objective on style sheets, it has quite a few different elements here, all the way from applying style rules to applying float and flexible layouts. Instead of going through each one of these items individually, I'm just going to give you an overview of the types of things I would want you to know and the questions I want you to be able to answer should you want to test out of this course objective. Of course, I'm going to go pretty quickly through cascading style sheets. So if there's anything specifically that I say or do that you want more depth on, please go to my main webpage and check out the YouTubes on those subjects because I have several individual YouTubes on cascading style sheets. Let's look at our little test document and let's run this in a browser. I'm in Notepad++ here, and here's where I have the web page now. I've applied several different styling techniques. And of course, the first thing I want you to know is just what's the purpose of CSS, cascading style sheets. Cascading style sheets are meant to do two things: style, which are the fonts, the colors, the background colors, and layout, which could include a single column layout or a two column layout, or in this case, I've just got a single column layout that does not stretch from border to border. I've constrained the content with an outer wrapper. Now let's look at how some of these styles are applied. First of all, the course objective is going to want you to know how to link to an external style sheet in your head section. That's where the majority of our styles are going to go, because when we link to an external style sheet, we can link that style sheet to many pages. So we can have one set of styles that are applied to many pages with this single link tag. Of course, I would want you to compare and contrast that to an embedded style sheet where we also can have styles for just a single page. And of course, the styles are constructed exactly the same as are constructed in the external style sheet. So if I change my background color here to something different, this embedded style sheet is going to override the external style sheet. I also want you to know about inline styles. An inline style would apply to simply that one element, and that's the least common because it applies to just that one element. And let's see what happens when we do that. And I've got Johnson County Community College in red. So I'm going to remove the inline style. Let's focus in on our external style sheet and what styles look like. Of course, every style has a selector, and while some people think that the selector is always the element name when you get started, it can also be an ID value or a class value. And of course, I want you to know the difference between addressing an ID as a selector, which affects only one element on a page, or a class selector, which impacts several elements on the page. There are other types of selectors that you would want to know at this point. For example, putting multiple selectors together or descendant selectors. You would also want to know about pseudo-class selectors. So some basic terminology about CSS, including why and how the cascade between external, embedded, and inline styles is incredibly important, as well as the basic terminology of styles, the selector, the property, and the property value. In addition, you're going to want to know and demonstrate the syntax of CSS, that all the rules go inside of curly braces, and that all of the different declarations are separated by semicolons. Finally, the property and the property value are always separated by a colon, and the space after the colon is optional. So when we use cascading styles to style the page, the obvious and easy things are the background color, the color property, to change the text color and the background color. In addition to the basics of CSS, I would want you to know how to use it to do a basic layout. I mean something more complex than one column. Certainly, I want you to know how to constrain all the content with an outer wrapper and pull the edges off the left and right sides of the viewport. And to do that, we typically will find a outer wrapper ID div that surrounds the entire content inside the body. Sometimes this is called outer wrapper, sometimes outer. But the key to how that works is in the CSS when I set the width to something less than 100% and I set my left and right margins to automatic. And in this case, I've also given it a background color of all white FFF and a little bit of padding on the left and right margins to push the content in. And that's what gives me my nice gray border on the body, my white background in the outer wrapper, and the 2 M's of padding between my outer wrapper and the rest of my content on the left and the right. If I wanted a little bit of padding at the top, I would simply say top, let's do 1M. Top, right, let's go bottom 1M and left 2M. And of course I can just shorten that to 1M, 2M if I want the same measurement on the top and bottom and the left and right. So I want you to know how to do that. How do you constrain your entire web page and pull it off the edge by setting the left and right margins to automatic? Another thing that is essential to CSS is to be able to make 2 columns. So for example, I've got 2 big sections of my web page. I've got this light teal unordered list, and it certainly does not need to be the width of the page. What I want to do is make this perhaps 25% of the page and then pull the rest of this content so that it can flow and use this extra space. So I've specifically given this element a light teal background so that we can see its block nature. We know its block nature is 100% of the width of its parent container. So let's go to that aside, and I'll show you in my HTML. I have coded the entire unordered list as an aside. Let's go to that and see what's going on in the CSS. To put 2 columns on a page when you're using a block element, we first have to set the width of the block to something less than 100%. And I'm going to go with 25% because it doesn't look all that wide. And then we have to float it. And I'm going to float it left. Now, if this were an image, it already has a width, so we don't need to set this width property. But for any block element, if we want to float it side by side with another block element, we have to pull its width in to less than 100%. So I'm going to make it 25%, float left, and then refresh my page and see how that looks. And already I'm starting to get the effect that I'm looking for. I'm wanting this content to fill this space. I'm not wanting this content to touch the side of this, and I'm also not wanting the footer to flow into this empty space. The 2 other things I want to do to fix this would be to set some right margin. I'm going to go with margin top, right. Let's say 3M, just to make it obvious. Bottom left. So on the aside, I'm going to throw a little margin over here, and that pushes this content, this block, away from the aside nicely. And I'm also going to make sure that I clear the float for my footer. I don't think I have any footer styles here yet. To make sure that the footer does not float in any free space and is its own block, we say clear both, if we want to clear both the left and the right float. And that doesn't appear to make any difference in my web page now because that footer was already pushed down to make it appear that it was in its own block because of the amount of content here. But watch what happens if I delete, let's just delete this entire paragraph and watch that our footer does not float back up into this free space. So the world of web development. Okay, let's go into our HTML and temporarily delete this paragraph. And here's a good way to delete it. Let's just comment it out because I might want to put that back in. I'll just stick it in there as a comment for now. Save, refresh, and there we go. My footer did not take up this free space. I've cleared the float on my footer. That is some of the key items that I want you to know in a style sheet. I have gone through them fairly quickly. There is so much to styles, but the terminology, the cascade, the selectors, the properties, the declarations, the syntax, and how to use CSS to do a layout, all of those issues are key to your understanding of CSS, are things that I want you to know to pass through this course objective. Thank you.